I do own gold. I do own silver. I've never sold any of my gold and silver. I first bought my first gold in 1971, before you were born. It was illegal in those days for Americans to own gold, but I bought some and I still have it, and I continue to buy silver and gold. I hope that I'm smart enough for my children to have my gold and silver someday. I have sold nearly all of my shares. I still own shares in China, and I still own shares in Uzbekistan, but I've sold everywhere else. And I'm sitting here with a lot of cash in US dollars, mainly not in other currencies, and I'm trying to figure out what to do next.
Long-term investors in precious metals are once again reassessing the landscape as global markets enter a period marked by elevated valuations, rising sovereign debt, and deep structural uncertainty. Traditional asset classes have surged for more than a decade, creating conditions that feel increasingly stretched. Against this backdrop, the role of gold and silver as anchors of stability is gaining renewed significance, especially for those who prioritize preservation of purchasing power across cycles. Jim Rogers, a globally respected investor and longtime observer of monetary history, emphasizes that gold and silver have maintained their role as reliable stores of value across generations. He highlights how cultural, historical, and economic forces consistently reinforce their importance, even as modern financial systems shift and evolve. With equities at record levels and geopolitical tensions rising, defensive positioning remains a key theme for cautious capital. As global debt burdens grow and major economies face cyclical and demographic headwinds, concerns about currency debasement continue to expand. Precious metals, supported by rising physical demand and tightening supply, remain well-positioned as long-term hedges. Their appeal extends beyond sentiment. They serve as tangible protection in an era where financial stability is increasingly fragile. Now, we present the clips from Jim Rogers' interview. Before we continue to discuss this, please subscribe to our channel and activate the bell icon for timely updates. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
I do own gold. I do own silver. I've never sold any of my gold and silver. I first bought my first gold in 1971, before you were born. It was illegal in those days for Americans to own gold, but I bought some, and I still have it, and I continue to buy silver and gold. I hope that I'm smart enough for my children to have my gold and silver someday. I have sold nearly all of my shares. I still own shares in China, and I still own shares in Uzbekistan, but I've sold everywhere else. And I'm sitting here with a lot of cash in US dollars, mainly not in other currencies, and I'm trying to figure out what to do next. So I will have to ask Danny, what do I do next? Well, I guess for silver, it's a long-term triple top, First went to 50 back in 1980, etc. It's now making new highs. I'm not selling my silver. If it goes down, I hope I'm smart enough to buy more. Danny, I repeat, I want my children to own my gold and silver someday. Unless, if the world comes to an end, I'll have to liquefy my gold and silver. But I hope that doesn't happen in my lifetime. I do own gold, I do own silver, but as I say, I've sold nearly all my shares around the world because for one of the few times in my life, nearly every market is making all-time highs. Danny, that has rarely happened. And in my experience, when everybody's having a good time, it's time to look out the window and say, wait a minute, something's wrong. Something's going to go wrong. Not wrong right now, but everybody's happy. Washington will tell you that everything is great and you don't have to worry. It's different now. It's different now. Be careful when you hear it's different now, Danny. But they will tell you you don't have to worry anymore. We figured out the answer. We know how to solve the problems. However, the U.S. market, and I'm mainly going to talk about the U.S. market, the U.S. market's been going up since 2009 or 2008, I should really precise. That's the longest in American history. Never, never. And I'm older than you, so it's the longest in your lifetime too. Never has the market gone up so long, so far, so many years. Trump will tell you, see, we've solved the problem. Everything is okay now. Okay, I'm worried. I'm not selling short yet, I will tell you, Danny, quickly. I'm not selling short yet because I don't see the wild hysteria that these things usually turn into. Looks like I sold too soon, but I'm not selling short yet. Yes, gold is, quote, an unproductive asset, so is silver for that matter. But Danny, I've been around long enough to know that people have always, throughout history, thought of gold and silver as a valuable thing. You remember Jesus Christ, he was sold for 30 pieces of silver. Because even then, even there, silver was very valuable, and it still is. People all over the world, it doesn't matter where you go, if you give them silver, they know you've given them something valuable. If you give them gold, they know. So, and many people who tell you it's crazy, that gold has no value, blah, blah, blah. Fine, fine. Let them tell you, let them tell me. I still own gold and silver, and I hope I'm smart enough to buy more if they go down. For whatever reason, Danny, throughout history, or at least most history, gold and silver have been considered valuable by human beings. If you can get the right silver stocks or the right gold stocks, but that takes work. And for me, it's simpler just to buy the gold, to buy the silver. You should have some silver under your bed. You should have gold in your closet. Everybody should. But if you're smart enough, diligent enough to figure out the stocks, I mean, my gosh, you'll make much, much more money if you buy the right stocks. Because then you get leverage, huge leverage, if you buy the right stocks. We have had periods of great friendship in the past 50 years. We've had the opposite. I don't see any reason that we shouldn't be great friends, except history shows that when you have a dominant country and a rising country, they have nearly always clashed, nearly always clashed. And sometimes it turns into shooting war. I'm talking about history now, reading history. There's no reason for that to happen, but there's never any reason for it to happen, except it has happened in the past. Yes, China's the most successful country in the world right now, at least rising country. U.S. is the most successful country in the world right now, but we have gigantic debt, and it's getting worse. That always has led to problems. I can remember 100 years, well, I don't remember, but I know that 100 years ago, Britain was the richest, most powerful country in the world. The British currency was the currency around the world. If you took an international trip, you took pounds sterlings with you, because that was recognized anywhere. Well, Britain went bankrupt. 60 years later, Britain was totally bankrupt because they kept running up debt. And I mean, I don't like knowing all of this stuff, Danny. I've read enough history, but I know what has happened to every country that's been on top throughout history. It makes me sad. I've got children, young children. You know, they're going to have serious, serious problems in their lifetime. Danny, I'm an old American. It's a good time to be an old American. It is not a good time to be a young American, because in their lifetime, that's what the British went through, and everybody before the British. America's going to have gigantic problems in my children's lifetimes. And I hope everybody is aware of what's coming, and I hope that they protect themselves. Whether it's gold or silver, or there are many ways to protect yourself, but I hope everybody is aware of what's going to happen. And if you don't know, read some history and you'll find out.
Growing global imbalances continue to shape investor behavior as rising sovereign debts, persistent inflation pressures, and widening geopolitical divisions reshape long-term expectations. Hard assets remain central in this environment, reinforced by a centuries-long pattern in which societies turn toward tangible stores of value during moments of financial uncertainty. Currency debasement, political dysfunction, and expansive monetary policies have all contributed to concerns about the durability of major economies, mainly as many rely on short-term fixes that mask structural deterioration. Across developed markets, policy choices designed to provide immediate relief often create deeper vulnerabilities, while repeated cycles of credit expansion gradually weaken purchasing power. Commodities with historical acceptance retain a unique role under these conditions, especially when households and institutions seek forms of protection that cannot be diluted. As tensions rise and nations increasingly blame external forces for internal challenges, the shift toward tangible assets becomes more pronounced. Let's get back to the interview.
Everything you said is correct, but I own gold and silver. I own U.S. dollars as well. Now, the U.S. dollar is a very flawed currency. There is no question, Danny. I mean, the United States, oh my gosh, and I'm an American citizen and taxpayer. But the U.S. dollar, the U.S. has never, no country in world history has ever been so deep in debt as the U.S. is. And it's getting worse every day, Danny. I know enough history to know that every country that gets into this kind of situation eventually has horrible problems. And this is 2025. In 1925, Britain was the richest, most powerful country in the world. 50 years later, this is not a typo, 50 years later, Britain was bankrupt. IMF had to bail them out. Margaret Thatcher was elected because Britain went bankrupt. Margaret Thatcher saved Britain. But what really saved Britain was the year Margaret Thatcher took power, 1979, was the year the North Sea oil started flowing. So, Danny, if you give me the largest oil field in the world, I'll give you a very, very good time. And all your friends, everybody you know, will all have a good time. And that's what happened to Britain. Thatcher took credit, but it was the North Sea oil that saved her. If we elect the Tooth Fairy as president of the U.S., all our problems will be solved. So you call up the Tooth Fairy and tell her she should run for president, and everything will be fine. I repeat, the UK became the richest, most powerful country in the world. 50 years later, it was bankrupt. Literally, the IMF had to come in and bail them out. Margaret Thatcher took credit for it, but it was the North Sea oil that saved Britain. And Britain is now going to have economic debt problems again. But I'm an American citizen, Danny, and I'm telling you what's happened in the U.S. I mean, I look at the numbers and I say to myself, can they not add? Can they not subtract in Washington? They probably cannot. You know, most of them are not very smart. That's why they go to work for the government. But the numbers are staggering. Just this year alone, the numbers are staggering. And I don't think anybody, very few people in Washington, even know how astonishing the numbers are. And I know, well, I've read enough history to know that this always ends badly. Well, you should throw in palladium too. Platinum and palladium are certainly alternatives, viable alternatives. I don't own either at the moment. I have in the past. But no, those are certainly viable alternatives. But when push comes to shove, Danny, in my experience, if you walk down the street in India, go to India, go to a market in India. They all know what gold is. They all know what silver is. But if you said to them, here we got some platinum, they'll probably turn around and go the other way. Because platinum and palladium, yes, you and I know, and many know, have great value. But in the backwoods, many people never heard of platinum and palladium, but they all know about gold. Now, a 50-year mortgage is great. Your payments go down a lot. In the end, of course, you pay much, much, much more in interest payments in the end. So many people say, my mortgage payments have been cut by a lot. That's great. Well, that's short-sighted if you ask me. But no, it's one of those gimmicks that politicians love because it makes a lot of people happy, seemingly happy, and everybody's fine, except the people who can add. The people who can add and multiply and subtract realize what's going on. Everybody who knows a little bit of economics knows that when you print a lot of money, it has always led to inflation. But most of these guys who work for the government don't care because they're assumed that they'll be gone by the time it gets to be a serious problem, and it won't affect them. It'll affect you, it'll affect me, but they hope, they think that it won't affect them because there's enough time, and obviously there is a lag effect when you print a lot of money. That's what these guys count on. That's why they work for the government, Danny. They look for the easy answer. They look for the simple, easy answer. It's not good for you, your children, anybody's grandchildren, but it's good for them. All I know is it's always had led to clashes, always throughout history. And yes, it doesn't have to happen. Of course, it doesn't have to happen. There's no reason for Americans to shoot Russians or Russians to shoot Germans or any of it. No reason for the Chinese to get involved, except for the fact that we're all human beings and we always have gotten angry. Somebody will come along and say, it's not our fault, it's those horrible foreigners. It's those evil foreigners that are causing the problems. We are all good, God-fearing, honest American citizens. We haven't done anything wrong. It's the foreigners. But likewise, in other countries, they say the same thing. They say it's all the evil Americans, the greedy Americans. This is the way the world has always worked. We're all human beings. Yes, I can tell you it's all crazy, but I know that we're all human beings, and I know what has always happened in the past. You think they know that in Washington? You think they know that in London, Tokyo? They're all bureaucrats. Throughout history, they get angry at each other. They don't know why. They have to get angry with other people. You have to blame your problems on the foreigners. You don't think that the people in Japan and the government are going to say, it's our fault. We have made mistakes. Oh, vote for the opposition. Get rid of us because we've made mistakes. That's not the way governments work. That's not the way politics has ever worked. Doesn't matter who you are. Again, if this were, 2020, if this were 1910, the British, the German, everybody was very happy. The royal families used to vacation together. They used to intermarry. They used to have big summer parties together. A few years later, they were slaughtering each other in the trenches of Europe, cursing each other. And these were people who had been singing and dancing and having picnics just a few years before. They were great friends, intermarrying, no question. But a few years later, they were cursing each other, slaughtering each other in the trenches. And you know what happened? In 1914, they all said, this will be over by Christmas. By the way, they always say when the wars start, don't worry, the boys will be home by Christmas, or whatever the holiday they happen to talk about. They always say the troops will be home by Christmas. And 6 months later, they all look at each other and say, how did this happen? How did we get into this stupid war? And they say, how do we get out? The problem is, by then, there's no way to get out because so many emotions have been built up, everything has been built up. So they continue to slaughter each other and spend gigantic amounts of money. Of course, a few years later, they all say, why did we do that? Why didn't we stop it? If you can figure out the answer to that, Danny, you'll save the world. But the problem is, this always happens. So they always say, how do we get out? How did we get into this stupid war? Now, how do we get out? And the problem is, there's no way out until you just kill a lot more people and spend a lot more money. We're human beings. You solve the problem, please. Please solve the problem. But even if you sit down with the new generation and explain to them, they're going to say, yes, but it's different now. Those horrible people in that country, they're horrible. Even their food smells bad. They smell bad, their food smells bad. They're horrible people. You cannot reason with them, but all we can do is shoot them. No, no,
Yep.
you and I both know it's absurd. And I can show you hundreds of wars, thousands of wars over the years, centuries. They always say the same thing, and they always make the same mistakes.
In an environment where debt loads expand faster than economies can sustainably support, long-term stability becomes increasingly fragile. Monetary authorities continue leaning on policies that temporarily soothe markets but quietly erode purchasing power, leaving households exposed to cycles of inflation, devaluation, and geopolitical tension. These dynamics often encourage investors to reassess what truly preserves wealth across generations, especially as the global system drifts toward competitive currency, weakening, and political uncertainty. History has repeatedly shown that periods of monetary strain reshape how nations interact, how capital flows, and where individuals choose to safeguard their savings. The growing disconnect between official reassurances and underlying economic realities only amplifies the search for assets that endure beyond political cycles. As the world moves deeper into this transitional phase, understanding these shifts becomes essential for anyone preparing for the next decade. Share your thoughts on their analysis in the comment section below. If you find this video informative, please support and turn on notifications to stay informed about our latest videos. See you in the following video. Thanks for watching.